After 25 years as a cardiologist, there's one conversation I find myself having more than almost any other. It happens when a patient looks at their blood pressure reading and asks me, which of these two numbers should I really be paying attention to? It's a simple question, but the answer has more nuance than most people realize, especially once you're past 60. And I think it's worth taking the time to understand clearly, because this is one of those areas where a little knowledge can genuinely help you take better care of yourself. I'm Dr. Maria Golden. Over the past 25 years, I've treated over 15,000 heart patients, and I've learned that the most valuable thing I can do isn't just treat problems after they happen. It's help people understand their own health well enough to make good decisions along the way. Today, I want to walk you through what those two blood pressure numbers actually mean, why one of them tends to matter more as we get older, and what you can do about it in partnership with your doctor. By the end of our time together, you'll have a clearer picture of what to look for and what questions to ask at your next appointment. This isn't complicated once you understand the basics. So let's start there. When the blood pressure cuff squeezes your arm and then slowly releases, it's measuring something that changes moment to moment. The pressure of blood pushing against the walls of your arteries. But because your heart beats in a rhythm, that pressure isn't constant. It pulses. And that's why you get two numbers instead of one. Think of it like waves at the beach. The top number, which we call systolic pressure, pronounced systolic, measures the peak of each wave. That's the moment when your heart contracts and sends a surge of blood out into your arteries, the highest point of pressure. The bottom number, diastolic pressure, pronounced diastolic, measures the trough between waves. That's when your heart relaxes between beats and the pressure drops to its lowest point. So if your reading is 140/85, it means the peak pressure is 140, and the resting pressure between beats is 85. Both numbers measured in millimeters of mercury, which is just the standard unit we use. For many years, doctors treated both numbers as equally important. If either one was elevated, you had high blood pressure and needed attention. That approach wasn't wrong, exactly. But over the past few decades, as researchers followed large groups of people over many years, a more nuanced picture emerged. And this is where age becomes relevant to the conversation. Let me tell you about a patient I'll call Helen. Her story helps illustrate something important that I think will make this easier to understand. Helen came to see me when she was 71, a retired teacher with 3 grown children and a habit of walking 2 miles every morning before breakfast. She was generally healthy, took good care of herself, and had been checking her blood pressure at home for years. When I looked at her recent readings, I noticed a pattern. Her top number, the systolic, was consistently running in the 150s and 160s. But her bottom number, the diastolic, was in the low 70s. Helen wasn't particularly worried. She told me her previous doctor had said the bottom number was the important one, and since that was fine, she figured she was doing okay. I understood why she thought that. For a long time, there was a belief that diastolic pressure was the better indicator of heart health because it reflects the baseline pressure in your arteries when your heart is at rest. The logic made sense on the surface. But the research over the past 30 years has taught us something different, especially for people over 60. Here's what we've learned. As we age, our arteries naturally become stiffer. They lose some of the elasticity they had when we were younger. Think of it like the difference between a new rubber band and one that's been sitting in a drawer for 20 years. The older one doesn't stretch and bounce back quite as easily. When arteries are stiff, they can't absorb the surge of pressure that comes with each heartbeat the way they used to. So the systolic pressure, that peak wave, tends to rise. Meanwhile, the diastolic pressure often stays the same or even drops a bit because those stiffer arteries don't recoil as effectively during the resting phase. This creates a pattern that's very common in people over 60. Elevated systolic pressure with normal or even low diastolic pressure. We call this isolated systolic hypertension, pronounced hypertension. And here's the important part. When researchers looked at which number best predicted heart attacks, strokes, and other cardiovascular problems in older adults, systolic pressure was consistently the stronger indicator. Not the only one that matters, but the more important one to pay attention to after age 60. Let me use another analogy to explain why this matters. Imagine your blood vessels as a network of garden hoses running throughout your body, delivering water to all the plants in a big garden. When those hoses are flexible and springy, they can handle surges of water pressure without any problem. The pressure wave comes through, the hose expands a bit, absorbs the force, and then settles back. But if those hoses have gotten stiff over time, they can't flex as much. Every surge of pressure is transmitted more directly to wherever the hose is connected. The faucets, the sprinkler heads, the joints where hoses connect. In your body, those connection points are your organs, your brain, your heart, your kidneys, your eyes. These are delicate structures with small blood vessels that can be affected by chronically elevated pressure over many years. This doesn't mean anything dramatic is going to happen tomorrow. But it does mean that over time, consistently elevated systolic pressure puts extra strain on these organs, and that strain can accumulate. The good news is that this is something you can address, and addressing it makes a real difference. Back to Helen. Once I explained this to her, she was understandably concerned. But I reassured her that having this information was actually good news, because it meant we could do something about it. We talked about lifestyle approaches first, because these form the foundation of blood pressure management regardless of which number is elevated. Sodium reduction was the first thing we discussed. Most of us consume more sodium than our bodies need, and reducing intake can have a meaningful effect on blood pressure, particularly the systolic number. This doesn't mean food has to be bland, but it does mean paying attention to processed foods, restaurant meals, and added salt at the table. The goal for someone with elevated blood pressure is generally 1,500 to 2,000 milligrams of sodium per day. Helen was already walking regularly, which was excellent. Physical activity helps blood vessels maintain their flexibility and helps the whole cardiovascular system work more efficiently. I encouraged her to keep it up. We talked about maintaining a healthy weight, limiting alcohol, and managing stress. All of these contribute to blood pressure control in ways that complement each other. But I was also honest with Helen. For most people over 60 with systolic pressure consistently above 140 or 150, lifestyle changes alone usually aren't enough. Medication is often part of the picture, and that's not a failure or a sign that you didn't try hard enough. It's simply the reality of how our bodies change as we get older. Helen started on a low dose of blood pressure medication. We monitored her readings at home over the following weeks, made one small adjustment to the dose, and within about 2 months, her systolic pressure was consistently in the 120s and low 130s. More importantly, Helen understood why we were doing this. She wasn't just following orders. She was making an informed decision about her own health. That's what I want for you, too. Now, let me address something that sometimes causes confusion. If systolic pressure is the more important number after 60, does that mean diastolic pressure doesn't matter at all? No, it still matters, but it matters in a somewhat different way. If your diastolic pressure is very low, sometimes below 60, this can actually create its own concerns. The blood vessels that supply your heart muscle, called the coronary arteries, fill primarily during the resting phase between heartbeats, when diastolic pressure is doing its work. If that pressure drops too low, your heart might not get quite as much blood flow as it needs. This is one reason why blood pressure management needs to be individualized. Your doctor looks at both numbers, considers your overall health, and finds the right balance for you. The goal isn't to drive your blood pressure as low as possible. The goal is to find the range that protects your organs while keeping you feeling well and functioning normally. For most people over 65, current guidelines suggest a systolic target of around 130 or below. For some very healthy older adults, even lower targets may be appropriate. For frail elderly individuals with multiple health conditions, slightly higher targets might make more sense to avoid problems from overtreatment. This is exactly why working closely with your doctor matters. These decisions aren't one size fits all. Let me share what happened with Helen over the next few years, because I think it illustrates how this process works in real life. After we got her blood pressure under control, Helen continued her morning walks, kept an eye on her sodium intake, and took her medication consistently. She bought a home blood pressure monitor, which I recommend for anyone managing hypertension, and checked her readings a couple of times a week. At her annual checkups, we reviewed her numbers, adjusted her medication once when her readings crept up a bit, and talked about how she was feeling. She had no significant side effects from her medication. Her energy was good. She was enjoying her retirement. 3 years later, Helen's heart and kidneys are doing well. Her blood pressure is controlled. She understands her health in a way she didn't before, and she's an active participant in her own care, rather than a passive recipient of whatever her doctor decides. That transformation, from uncertainty to understanding, from worry to confidence, is what I hope this video can help start for you. Before I move on, I want to make sure you know the warning signs that require immediate attention. While we're talking about blood pressure as something to manage over time, there are situations that need urgent care. If you ever experience sudden severe headache, especially one that's different from any headache you've had before, or sudden numbness or weakness on one side of your face or body, or difficulty speaking or understanding speech, or sudden vision changes, or chest pain or difficulty breathing, please don't wait. Call 911 immediately. These can be signs of stroke or heart attack, and getting help quickly makes an enormous difference in outcomes. For day-to-day blood pressure management, the approach is much more gradual. But it's important to know when something needs urgent attention. Now, let me walk you through what I'd encourage you to do after watching this video. First, know your numbers. If you haven't had your blood pressure checked recently, make a point to do so this week. Many pharmacies have automatic monitors you can use for free. Or pick up an inexpensive home monitor, which is a worthwhile investment if you're managing blood pressure over time. When you check your pressure, write down both numbers and the date. Over time, this gives you and your doctor a much clearer picture than occasional readings at office visits. Second, pay particular attention to your systolic number if you're over 60. If it's consistently above 130, and especially if it's above 140, this is worth discussing with your doctor, even if your diastolic number looks fine. Third, embrace the lifestyle foundations. Reducing sodium, staying physically active, maintaining a healthy weight, limiting alcohol, managing stress. These aren't optional extras. They're the base upon which everything else builds. Even if you need medication, these habits make the medication work better and may allow you to use lower doses. Fourth, if your doctor prescribes blood pressure medication, take it consistently. I can't emphasize this enough. The most common reason blood pressure medications don't work as well as they should is that people don't take them regularly. Set a daily reminder. Use a pill organizer. Make it part of your routine like brushing your teeth. And please, never stop or change your medication without talking to your doctor first. Stopping suddenly can cause your pressure to spike, which is potentially dangerous. If you're having side effects or concerns, call your doctor and discuss alternatives. There are many different blood pressure medications available, and almost everyone can find a combination that works well without causing problems. Fifth, monitor at home if you're managing hypertension. Home readings give you and your doctor real information about what your blood pressure does day to day, not just during the somewhat artificial environment of a medical office. Some people have higher readings at the doctor's office due to anxiety, which we call white coat hypertension, pronounced hypertension. Others have normal readings at the doctor but elevated pressure at home, which is actually the more concerning pattern. Home monitoring catches both of these situations and helps ensure your treatment is truly working. Sixth, stay engaged with your healthcare team. Blood pressure management isn't something you set up once and forget about. Your needs may change over time. Your kidney function, other medications, and overall health all play a role. Regular checkups give you and your doctor the opportunity to fine-tune your approach. I want to be clear about something. Blood pressure medication is not a sign of weakness or failure. For people over 60 with stiff arteries and elevated systolic pressure, medication is often genuinely protective. Studies have shown that treating elevated blood pressure in older adults reduces the risk of stroke by about 30% and reduces overall mortality by about 20%. These are meaningful numbers. The goal isn't to avoid medication at all costs. The goal is to protect your heart, your brain, your kidneys, and your quality of life for the years ahead. Sometimes that requires medication, and that's okay. I also want to address something I hear occasionally. Some people believe that blood pressure naturally rises with age and shouldn't be treated aggressively in older adults because it might cause more harm than good. They worry about blood pressure dropping too low and causing falls or confusion. This concern is understandable, but for the vast majority of older adults, it's not accurate. Yes, we need to be thoughtful about not dropping pressure too rapidly or too aggressively in very frail individuals. But the research is clear that most people over 60, even those over 80, benefit significantly from appropriate blood pressure control. The key word is appropriate. Working with your doctor, monitoring your response, adjusting as needed. That's the thoughtful approach that protects you without creating new problems. Let me bring this back to what I hope you'll take away from our time together. If you're over 60, your systolic blood pressure, that top number, deserves your attention. It's the number that best predicts your cardiovascular risk at this stage of life. It's the number that tends to rise as arteries stiffen with age. And it's the number that, when controlled, offers real protection for your heart, brain, and kidneys. This doesn't mean the bottom number is meaningless. It doesn't mean you should panic if your systolic is elevated. And it certainly doesn't mean you should try to manage this on your own without your doctor's guidance. What it means is that you now have a clearer understanding of what's happening in your body, why it matters, and what you can do about it. That understanding puts you in a better position to have productive conversations with your healthcare team and to make informed decisions about your own care. Helen, the retired teacher I mentioned earlier, told me something at one of her recent visits that stuck with me. She said, "I used to feel like blood pressure was this mysterious thing that happened to me. Now I feel like I understand it, and that makes all the difference." That's what I want for you. Not fear, not confusion, but understanding and confidence. We've covered quite a bit today, and I'm grateful you stayed with me through all of it. If this helped clarify something that felt confusing before, I'd be glad if you'd consider subscribing to this channel. I share practical, evidence-based information like this regularly, always with the goal of helping you understand your health better. And if you know someone over 60 who might benefit from understanding their blood pressure numbers more clearly, consider sharing this video with them. Sometimes the most helpful thing we can do for people we care about is point them toward information that might make a difference. Thank you for your time today. Take good care of yourself. Keep an eye on that top number, and I'll see you in the next video.